Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Combat Chat podcast. And this week we're going to be discussing the upcoming fight night between Lewis and Almeida. Should be a really good one. Before we do that though, let's talk about the boxing.
Yeah, I think it's a big point to get started on. In my opinion, one of the biggest feats in combat sports history, maybe even in sporting history. Although, in my opinion, Ngannou, the win was taken off him by the judges. His boxing performance was insane considering, fighting the lineal heavyweight champion. Everyone sees him as the number one in the world. I could put the argument forward that Usyk is, but we won't get into that. Ngannou, just his ring IQ seemed so good. He was so patient. A lot of people thought the only way for him to win would be to catch Tyson Fury early, which didn't happen. It ended up going to the scorecards. How impressed are you of Ngannou managing to go the distance? And a lot of people think he won.
For a start, we're looking at Ngannou. Going distance is one thing, but to look at what every other MMA fighter has done going into boxing, these are all MMA fighters who have been fighting influencers with the exception of a few. I know Anderson Silva's had a few pro boxing fights, but all of these MMA fighters, some of which were considered to be pound for pound best in the world, we have likes of Nate Diaz coming in and not doing too well against these relatively high level influencer boxers. However, regardless, influencer boxers anyway, but they're not Titan Furies. They're not fighting Titan Furies, and Ngannou has gone from MMA, not showing that he is necessarily a traditional boxer in MMA, although his striking is very high level, his boxing was very high level, to looking like a boxer.
Yeah.
And the way he was throwing, the way he was moving, everything about him, if you never heard them from MMA, if this is you were purely a boxing fan and you'd never heard of Francis Ngannou and you'd never seen anything to do with MMA, you think you've been training boxing his whole life.
Yeah, I think the main thing for me is I sat with my family and watched it because only me and my brother are really big MMA fans. My other brothers get into it too, but my family come from like a traditional boxing standpoint where, they follow the names like Tyson Fury, the Anthony Joshua's. Every time they fight, it's a big deal in my house. Like there's almost like a celebration when it's on. So my dad and my mum sat down and watched the fight with me, and both of them thought Ngannou won. And I don't think they really understood like how crazy it was Ngannou coming from MMA. Where, let's be real, a lot of people said he wasn't the most technical of strikers in MMA, more of just a pure, probably the scariest knockout artist we've ever had in MMA. But to go in there against the best heavyweight in the world. Probably, I'm not sure about the pound for pound rankings, but he's probably in the top 5 pound for pound rankings in boxing. And, he went out there, got the big moment where he knocked him down, the biggest moment of the fight, dancing on him afterwards. How crazy is that? Dancing on him.
It's absolutely ridiculous. It's almost impossible to believe.
Yeah.
And to think that he did that against what is arguably the best boxer in the world, it's beyond impressive. He has not gone in and fought somebody low in the rankings. He's not came in as a boxing newcomer fighting boxing almost like the stepping stones. He's gone straight to the top. He has fought one of the hardest opponents you could potentially take, and he did very, very impressive. And I don't know if Tyson Fury shook. Don't want to say he did, but he definitely, you could tell that he did not expect for Francis Ngannou to behave the way he did, to fight the way he did. He looked so technical, and it was one of these things. Like I can't really believe, not necessarily the result is the result. The judges, in my opinion, scored that very poorly. I think that looking at what Ngannou did, even if you were to just watch highlights, you could definitely tell that I think that he had the better of it when we did see these highlight moments. But with the knockdowns and just the pressure he was applying, you wouldn't have thought that he'd do that.
No.
At all, really. And you wouldn't have thought that everything from his stance to his footwork to just his boxing in general. He has the boxing technique of somebody who's been boxing my whole life.
Yeah, I think one of the main points for me is the point you brought up about Tyson Fury looking a bit shook. I think what was going through Fury's head, you could see the first thing he did when he went out in the first 30 seconds is he threw one big shot. I think he thought he could put Ngannou out early and sort of dominant, put him away in spectacular fashion. And when he didn't, we see Tyson Fury revert to tactics where he kind of like walks people down, leans on them. I mean, he was the bigger guy than Ngannou, which we're not used to seeing. And not even that was working. I mean, these boxers, one thing they can't have over MMA guys is grappling, and Ngannou was kind of throwing him about in the clinch, landing some of his nastiest shots in from the clinch. And I think it just shocked Fury, and he couldn't really get going. He couldn't find his jab. And you mentioned his stance as well. Every time Fury would switch, I think, in his head he thought, I'll switch stance. He's not used to fighting southpaws necessarily, and especially boxing southpaws. Ngannou would switch with him and go southpaw and box probably more than half the fight at southpaw and 1 rounds at southpaw, which is even more of a hats off to him.
It's really interesting. It maybe makes you think to yourself that these MMA fighters can do very well in boxing if they do decide to box like this. I think with MMA, there's one of the big things in MMA is switching your stance. We don't see that as much in boxing. We see you have your orthodox boxers, you have your southpaws, you have your unorthodox. For the most part, it's generally quite linear. They tend to stay in the same stance, and they tend to keep it very basic to an extent in regards to their stance. But something which you're doing in MMA a lot of is you're seeing a lot of fighters continuously switching stances, and that's something which I think that maybe we need to see MMA fighters who do go into boxing potentially start bringing in these things which impact the MMA fights into the boxing, which aren't being done. When you're boxing, you're kind of not really taught to switch your stances. In fact, it's kind of discouraged to an extent.
Yeah.
Because you can start tripping over your feet and all of these things. But I think it had a really, really big impact. And it's something which you're not used to fighting against either.
Yeah.
It's not something which I imagine Tyson would have been thinking about in his camp necessarily.
Yeah, good point.
And I think the clinching as well, it's really interesting you say that. The clinching in boxing, if you look at MMA, majority of the grappling, although we like to think of grappling as on the floor all the time, clinching is all grappling.
Yeah.
And if you're the top fighter, if you're top of clinching fighter, then you're definitely going to have a big advantage over a lot of these boxers who are used to boxing clinching, because a lot of these MMA fighters, they train clinching relentlessly.
Yeah.
They train that. They want to be the best in the clinch. You have to be the strongest in the clinch in MMA, otherwise you are in severe trouble. And in boxing, obviously, it's going to be very similar. But when maybe 33-40% of your camp might be, or just your general development might be the clinch, then that is going to have a great impact.
And you see, the point you mentioned about them working a lot of their camp in the clinch, a lot of the things that we saw, and we can just sort of blast off how many things that impressed us with Ngannou, but his cardio, everyone thought he was going to gas out early. Went 10 rounds, looked good in the 10th round. Did look a bit tired, but so did Tyson Fury. And I think that kind of comes into a part where MMA, you see these sort of guys like Volkanovski training that on their groundwork, and a lot of it is just relentless pace, just multiple people switching out and putting you in bad positions, and that builds a different sort of cardio and muscle strength where I think Ngannou was probably the strongest guy Fury's ever fought.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. So I mean, if you look at what he has done in the UFC to the opponents, the strength, and he's big, but he's big and muscular. He's big, muscular, and strong. He's not like some of these heavyweights who aren't soft. It's interesting, though, the point you make about the cardio. I think that sometimes people will look at MMA fighters going to boxing and they think, how are they going to cope? These long rounds, or not so much long rounds, but these continuous rounds with very minimal rest. MMA fighters, yes, they may only fight 15 minutes on average with 5-minute rounds, but the cardio, these MMA fighters are training to fight for 40 minutes, 30 minutes. I don't think it's often a debate. We do see in the UFC fighters do gas out. It is very common, but I think looking at cardio as something which is going to negatively impact MMA fighters and boxing as a whole, in my opinion, it's a completely wrong way to look at it.
I think,
with exceptions.
Yeah, I think, like you say, with exceptions, the one that had people thinking of that is Conor McGregor. How quick he gassed against Floyd Mayweather and got finished in that fight. I think people kind of looked at that and thought it would be the same, but Ngannou, he only trained like 3 months as well.
Well, that's the thing. A lot of these fighters will be fit all year round, though.
Yeah.
And it's quite relatively easy to keep it as long as you're consistent in your training. And the way Ngannou's built genetically, his cardio is going to be very, very high level. We saw him finish a lot of opponents in the UFC relatively quickly, so it's quite hard to gauge. But overall, it's very impressive. It's an interesting point you made about Conor McGregor. I do also think, though, that we look at a lot of these fighters who do gas, they were also gassing in the UFC.
Yeah. But Ngannou was gassing hard in the UFC. I mean, not towards the end, to be fair, we didn't get to see his gas tank much. Cyril Gane, he did look tired, but he went 5 rounds and won a lot of those rounds too. So, I mean, he come back with being 2 years out and look that good. It was just super impressive, and we could sit and talk about him for the whole podcast. We do have actually, I think we should talk about where he does go from here, because they're talking about a Deontay Wilder MMA fight. I don't think that's a great idea. I'd love to see them two box. In my opinion, I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
So I personally don't believe that they should be making boxers, or they should be having MMA fights with boxers, in my personal opinion. I don't think that's the next logical step. What he's shown in boxing, I think boxing is the next natural progression. Either that, or maybe he was more money as well. Either that, or maybe if for his interest he would refer back to MMA. I don't think though that boxing. I don't think that boxers fighting in MMA is
smart.
I don't think it's smart, and it's not what you want to see either. Because when you're putting on a performance like that, you want to see him be tested again and again, and at a higher level, and this is what you want to see.
Yeah, I'm so excited to see him box again, and I don't think it would be smart for Wilder to jump in and do MMA. But Ngannou does have to go and fight MMA. He's got a contract with the PFL. So they said he can have another boxing match first, but at some point early next year he will have to have a fight in MMA. And maybe, I mean, Wilder was actually on the PFL broadcast a couple of nights ago, and they were speaking about MMA fight, and he seems down. I think it might happen, to be honest.
If it does happen, it would be interesting. What would be great to see would be Wilder putting a performance like Ngannou in boxing. That would be so cool to see. I feel like it's a little bit harder to do in MMA than it is in boxing. Although it's still, either way, it's still regardlessly very much challenging in both senses. In fairness, Ngannou was able to do that on 3 months.
Yeah.
Who's to say what Wilder will be able to do? For all you know, he's on his way to black belt in jiu-jitsu. So
I think he's been training. I've heard he's been training about 7 months in MMA, which obviously isn't a long enough time. But Ngannou started training MMA when he was 25. It's not like he's a lifelong martial artist. But the main thing is, Wilder's not a big dude. I think he walks around at like 240, 250 at most. Ngannou probably walks around at like 300. He weighs in a lot of the time Wilder at like 235, so maybe he could even make like a light heavyweight limit, and Ngannou will ragdoll someone like that. Let's be real.
Well, it's one of those things though. I think as well though, you look at a lot of kickboxers to go into MMA. With MMA, although it's beneficial to be training for a very long time, we do see a lot of these kickboxers. I think kickboxers are probably the best example. We do also see collegiate wrestlers as well, and the likes of the Romeros and whatnot, who come from very much single sport backgrounds, do very well in MMA. So it could potentially work if he's able to really quickly sharpen up. I just feel like with Ngannou having the experience he does have in MMA and having trained in these disciplines for, like you said, he did join very late, in all fairness to him, but having all of these years over, I personally, like you said, I could see a lot of ragdolling about.
Yeah. Leg kicks as well. Imagine Ngannou leg kick and Wilder with those little skinny legs he's got.
Well, it's interesting because you see these bodybuilders get kicked by like Stephen Thompson. And it's, you think to yourself, all right, these guys are massive. There's so much muscle, they're not going to feel that. It doesn't matter what protection you have there. Getting a leg kick by somebody who knows how to throw a meaty leg kick, doesn't matter how big their legs are. If you know how to throw a leg kick at a world-class level.
And Ngannou does. He like sweat people off their feet with leg kicks. He has some brutal leg kicks.
A leg kick can break your leg so easily.
Yeah.
It doesn't, checking it, whatever it may be, it's not good.
So I think the main point I like to get off, I do just want to see him box. Imagine him fighting the likes of Anthony Joshua and even like Andy Ruiz and stuff. Is so exciting. And I think we will see that. We'll see him have MMA fights. I know PFL, there's talks of them buying Bellator. So, I mean, horrifically, I could see a Ryan Bader versus Ngannou matchup, which, might not be the most competitive fight, but it's a big fight you can make. So there's just so much you can do with Ngannou. He's a global superstar now. He's going to be making. He's 37, and he still looks like he's in good sort of prime of his career. Obviously, we're watching him the other night. So if he can have another 3 years, he'll be making 5 mil at least every fight from now on, in my opinion. Because in these boxing ones, it's rumored that he made 10 to 20 mil on this one. He'll make loads more than that in his next one.
Oh, definitely so, because after this, every boxing fan and every MMA fan is going to want to watch this.
Yeah.
It's not as if we've seen a poor performance, we've seen him give it a go, and it just didn't work out. This is not a McGregor-Mayweather situation at all. This is completely different, and everybody is going to want to watch it. And something as well, I think that this does almost set a precedent for one of the... I know you were talking about one of the best combat sports fighters of all time. Unfortunately, we didn't see him in the UFC as long as we wanted to. There were reasons behind that. But if you look at what he's done, there aren't many athletes, if any at all, really, which have done this on a grand scale. I know that you have certain fighters who have done very well in jiu-jitsu competitions.
It's like Pereira's up there, Henry Cejudo's up there, but none of these guys could go into... That's like them go... That's like Bo Nickel going and beating who was Gordon in that jiu-jitsu match they had. Like someone who seems unbeatable against someone who's maybe just done wrestling, like in jiu-jitsu. So in my opinion, no one's done something like this, and it is a shame that officially he didn't get the win. But even if it was the other way, and a lot of people think Fury just edged it, everyone would still be looking at it like an Ngannou win. So I think it's just exciting to see what he does. We do have some card fights for the UFC this week. We're gonna sort of fly through the main card. First fight on the main card. Well, I think the Derek main card, we're always excited, right?
Oh, definitely so.
What's kicking off the card?
So I believe it's Ismail Bonfim, Vink Pichel.
Yeah.
So Vink, he's 40 years of age, and he's been fighting the UFC for a very long time. I think 11 years now.
Yeah.
He came off a tough. In all fairness to him, fair play, it's very impressive that he has continued to fight, and he's not necessarily the super active. He does have maybe 1 or 2 fights a year, which compared to some fighters isn't so much, but he's still going for it. He's not had the best run recently. He's not done too badly. Like, he has had a few wins. But the trouble is, with Vink, I think that once you get to a certain age, once you start losing, your not necessarily sharpness, but your just explosiveness, and that's what it is. Because if he had the explosiveness, if he had the energy and just the follow through of some of these younger fighters, some of these other fighters in this division, he would be very high up there. And he does walk down his opponents.
Yeah,
he does walk you down. He does go for it. The trouble is, he just isn't active enough in walking you down. He doesn't do a lot when he's walking you down. Ismail Bonfim, his brother's fighting on this card as well.
Yeah, they're beasts, both of them.
Ismail Bonfim, he had that knee finish against flying knee, McKinney, which is pretty brutal to be fair.
But that was a bad one, to be fair.
But yeah, no, he's looking very good. He's came off Contender a couple of fights back. Something which I've noticed about him, he's a very good counter striker, and he's very opportunistic as well. His footwork's very good, and he's very good at landing these big, heavy strikes when he's being thrown at. His defense is quite good. It's not as if he takes strikes and throws as he's getting strikes. He is very good at evading it. This isn't one which I think Vink's going to win, personally. I do really like him, though.
He's a cool dude.
And in fairness, you can't discredit him at all, really, because compared to a lot of fighters, he does a lot more. And he's still fighting. He's got a record of 40-3, so he's not done too badly. He's okay. It's just, I think Ismail just has that about him, though, that explosiveness. And out of the two of them, I feel like when I watch Gabriel, I think that's what Ismail's going to be. I can personally see this being a finish. But I think it's very tough. So he could potentially last it.
I think he might be a bit too stiff, though. I think the shots that he's going to be getting hit with, even early on, I'm going to go... I think he's going to get finished in the first round, to be honest. He's a tough dude, but Bonfim, he's a beast. Knocking out someone like Terence McKinney just shows that as well. Obviously struggled against Saint Denis last time out, but we saw how good he's been looking. But just how active and Pichel in his last fight against Mike Madsen looked really stiff and slow. Couldn't really get it going. He did win the second round. Thought he was going to win the third, but I think everything's just starting to slow down for him, and he's going to be getting caught a lot early. He keeps his head on centre line a lot, and I think Bonfim's a dangerous enough striker to take opportunities at every moment they're on the feet together.
This is the trouble you see. So what you said about him being stiff, with him being as pressing as he is, this is kind of ideal for Ismail. This is kind of when he's landing these big strikes. Against Teres Bikini, that flying knee, I didn't see it coming.
No. I saw a knockout coming, but not like that.
But the strikes he was throwing these big overhands, lovely left hooks. But to throw a flying knee like that, if you have somebody coming towards you, that for him is ideal. And that for him is very easy to get caught. I mean, we could see another flying knee.
Yeah, maybe, to be fair.
Possible. I'm going to say second round finish. I think he's going to make it for a first, although it could be the first one. This is no disrespect to Vink. I think this is a very challenging matchup for him here.
Yeah, this is rough.
And in fairness to him, it's a hard one. It's a hard one for him. It's just a hard fight.
You like this dude, don't you?
I do. I just like how.
So do I, to be fair.
You have to respect him, and that's the thing, because he's not. Like you said, he might be a bit static, but he's active. He's just not active enough when he's coming towards you.
He's always game as well. Like, he's chatting shit. He's like walking people down. Like, he's there to fight.
You have to respect anyone who just walks you down. That's the thing, because it's just brave, really, and it's just like. Yeah, brave. Not as in like it wouldn't be brave not to, but it just shows something. It's almost like you got a bit of dog in you.
Yeah. There to fuck and there to kill.
Definitely so.
I'm really excited for this next matchup on the card. I feel like we've covered Rodolfo Vieira so much on this podcast. I mean, we've spoke about all his jiu-jitsu accolades. It's kind of like a battle of styles on this one. We got the kickboxer against the jiu-jitsu guy. Vieira starting to look a bit better on the feet. He looked like he was scared to take a punch in his first few fights. I think he's on a bit of a run, maybe 2 in a row. Finally getting to work his ground game. How do you think their styles match up here?
So it's really interesting. He lost their decision to Chris Curtis, but 8 out of his 7 wins have been by submission.
Yeah,
and it's interesting because when I look at Rodolfo Vieira, I think jiu-jitsu fighter who learned MMA. And he is on a bit of a tear. Chris Curtis, really big fight. But if you look at what he's doing on the ground, I feel like with Rodolfo Vieira on the feet, he is looking better, but he is very, very vulnerable to strikes, and he does tend to cover up. And a lot of the time, when you do see him get these submissions, it's often from these clinches. With Pizzarro, it's a matter of the way he strikes. He's very kick heavy.
Yeah.
He's very much leg kick. He's very much roundhouse. He's throwing kicks at you continuously. He strikes as well, but his distance management isn't as good as you think for someone who throws kicks, but it's definitely there.
Yeah, it's good.
And with Rodolfo Vieira, a lot of the time, the majority of his submissions are coming from when he's clinching. You don't see him shooting these double legs or these single legs because he's a jiu-jitsu fighter. He's not a wrestler. He's got jiu-jitsu. He's a very high-level jiu-jitsu fighter who's won the last 7 jiu-jitsu World Cups. With this one, I think this is a really challenging fight, not because of necessarily the skill level, but because of how the fight is. Like you said, he's a very good kickboxer.
Yeah.
And I think that when you're kickboxing like that, this isn't somebody who's going to be trying to exchange with you up close, because that's where the danger is when you're up close. Rodolfo Vieira, when the pressure is applied to him, he does tend to cover up a little bit, and he doesn't really have that dog on the feet. On the ground, he's a magician.
Yeah.
He really is some of the best jiu-jitsu in the UFC, if not the best jiu-jitsu in the UFC.
It's up there.
I personally think I could see a finish. I could see either a finish or a decision. But I could see a finish with the way he throws his kicks and the damage output he provides, and just the consistency as well. I think if Rodolfo Vieira takes it to the ground, with Rodolfo Vieira, you see him take it onto the ground, you kind of think so.
Yeah.
And it's crazy, really, because he has sub people from all sorts of different positions, and he has so many different submissions in his arsenal. And it's what you'd expect from somebody like that. But I personally think he's going to have a hard time. The only time he's going to be able to really get him down is if he does shoot. And I don't think he's going to be able to really deal with that very well, because no matter where it is, although he doesn't tend to shoot so much, it's primarily from the clinch. When he does grab hold of you, a lot of the time you are on the ground.
Yeah, I think an interesting point is that protrusion is the big kicker. I think that does leave opportunities for Rodolfo Vieira to kind of maybe catch a leg and trip him out from that sort of way. And protrusion has never been finished by submission. Obviously, never fought anyone like Rodolfo Vieira. But I think it kind of shows that he's not smug on the ground for someone who came in from a kickboxing background. He's not an easy guy to take down at all. He's looked very good in the UFC. But if it touches the ground, I see Rodolfo Vieira winning by submission. And he throws so many leg kicks that all it takes is one for him to catch it and trip his other leg out from there. It's just he's got to be very careful. It's like fine opportunities that he has to take to throw those leg kicks. I think that's what would lead to a finish. Vieira's not necessarily the best guy at taking damage, so if he can inflict a lot of damage, then I think Tryujian can get a finish maybe in the third round. But I'm split between a submission as well, because Vieira, he's such a beast. What's your prediction on this one? I want to hear yours first.
So I was going to go with Arman second round finish. I personally think it's an interesting point you make, because I was literally thinking to myself, this could go two ways. He could potentially grab a takedown or take him to the ground through these kicks. But then I thought to myself, how is he going to cope with it? Because I can't see Rodolfo Vieira taking him down from catching a leg. I'm not saying that it's impossible, but I just don't think it's something which he typically tends to do. I think a lot of the time he tends to get takedowns from when he's up close against the cage, and often when the pressure is being applied more when it's coming towards him, in the sense that his opponent is coming towards him. I could see a finish if it does go to the ground, very much so. His jiu-jitsu is just too good. It's almost like you see him take it onto the ground, and I mean, I was saying this about Nathaniel Wood, though.
Yeah.
But no,
I think there might be a tiny bit of bias in that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. So 100% without a doubt. But I think protrusion, I think that his distance management, I think that just the velocity he throws his kicks out as well. And I just think the damage is going to be a bit too much. And I think that Rodolfo Vieira, he's not always the best at taking these strikes, these big strikes, and it's because he is a jiu-jitsu fighter. He is truly he is such a superb martial artist, but at the same time, it's very, very different. Like when I look at him, I think jiu-jitsu fighter, world class, one of the best in the world. Who
maybe on steroids?
Well, who knows? Who went into the UFC and he's got a good bit of MMA, but it's not his. You can tell that he is very much primarily a jiu-jitsu fighter. And I think that you look at fighters like Rodolfo Vieira, when they do fight some of these opponents who have a bit more about them.
Yeah.
That sounds very disrespectful, but it's not. True, it is what it is. It is true.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. But no, a lot of these fighters as well, they do find holes.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Vieira has a lot of.
Yeah, so what did you say, second round?
Second round finish, I can see it. I can see a KO, TKO.
I think I'm going to agree with you. But I so want to pick submission, but I'm going to go TKO with you, second round. I think that's just the most likely outcome. The damage that he's going to be delivering kind of will lead to that, in my opinion. Getting on to the next fight, another banger fight. This is a strong main card, in my opinion. Caio Borralho against Abus Magomedov. Abus, last fight against Strickland, who's now the champion. Gassing out early and getting finished in that fight. Borralho's looked insane since coming in through Contender Series. 14-1. I think he took a loss early on in his career. Great grappler, showing improved striking. I think he'll be looking to drown Abus in this fight. I think that's the obvious game plan for him.
So I think this is the same thing. We look at Abus. He's very, very good on the feet, and he throws a lot as well, and it's so technical. And when it comes down to Xiao, he's good, but he's explosive. He's just a very, very explosive fighter, and he's very much from the get-go. From the start of the fight, he is on you right away. He shoots very early as well. It's almost like it's the first thing he does. Almost as if it's, second nature to just instantly shoot. I think that is going to be a bit too much for Abbas to handle. I don't think that. I think that you said about the gas now against Strickland, which, by the way, that's crazy to think that he was fighting Sean Strickland in July.
Mad.
Like, he did gas out. Sean Strickland did walk him down, though.
They wanted new faces in that division. They were getting bored of that top 5, weren't they?
Oh, definitely. So, but with Chow, I can see him very much. Just the pressure, I think, is going to be too much. And I think that Abbas could potentially catch him.
Yeah.
And I think that's something which could happen very likely because of Chow is very much somebody who's just going to get in your face and apply that pressure, and he's going to almost have that close dogfight kind of fighting style.
Yeah.
Just but I think overall, I think that this is a fight which Chow takes, and I could see a finish as well. I could see first round, second round.
First, really that early?
I think though, just the pressure because you look at Abbas, he's not as active as he needs to be. I
think he's a bit too active against that. In that Sean Strickland fight, he came out throwing the kitchen sink, trying to take Strickland's head off of everything. Everything was, or maybe he's not super active, but everything he throws is to take your head clean off, and I think that's why he gassed out so quickly. It could be a tough test for Baraujo because, I mean, Abbas, I don't think he's a bad grappler either. Like, I haven't seen loads, but he took down Sean Strickland. He's Russian. I don't think he fights out of Russia, but I'm guessing he's got some Russian heritage in him.
Magomedov. Yeah, I think he fights out of Germany, but he's from Dagestan.
Yeah, exactly.
He is from Dagestan.
Yeah, so you'd hope he'd have some grappling there. For me, I'm aiming more third round maybe submission for I don't know if it's Xiao or Cao or whatever his name is, but Baraujo, I'll go third round submission.
I mean, first round is a bit audacious in it, but
he couldn't gas out so
I
quick.
just think the pressure is going to be too much. I really do. I just think he's going to be on him continuously, and it's so hard when you've got somebody who's got the wrestling, he's got the striking, he's very top heavy. I can see first round, second round. I think second round, potentially. I mean, I can see it ending in the first round though. I really can. Very quick one.
Yeah, his grappling has looked insane since he's come into the UFC. Much like the person fighting in the main event, they kind of remind me of each other quite similarly. Like the way they've just come in and double legged everyone and done what they want with them. Getting into the next fight, it is a rematch they fought I think a year or two ago. In my opinion, one of the best names in MMA, Rodrigo Nascimento Ferreira against Dontel Mays. Dontel Mays, he's always been an interesting character for me because he looks like he should be a good striker with the way he is on the feet. Do you know what I mean?
He does, and I think that you said it's a rematch. Looking at their previous fight, it's interesting. I think this is such a good matchup.
Yeah.
Because, as you said on the feet, they both look so much better than they did a year ago. The way they fight now, it's like they've improved everything in every aspect. But I do know what you mean. He does look like he should be better on the feet. I think that there's just almost like a lack of that oomph, you know what I mean? It's just a lack of it because he's got the technique there and he knows how to do everything and he knows how to do everything to a good standard. It's just there's nothing really, there's not enough behind it. And this is a really interesting matchup. Rodrigo, he has that wrestling.
Yeah.
And I think that's something which Dontel does kind of lack a little bit. But watching Dontel in his last few fights, he's been a lot more aggressive.
Yeah.
And he's been a lot more on it. And I think that's something which he kind of lacked against Rodrigo last time. He lacked that kind of dog in him. He wasn't really pushing for it as much as it was. And you need to be doing that against Rodrigo. Rodrigo is a hard person to exchange with. But I feel like on the feet, he's definitely a bit better.
Yeah.
Not massively.
No, it's close.
But there is definitely that edge there with Rodrigo on the ground with the wrestling. He's definitely excels on that one. I think this one's going to be a lot closer than the last one, in my opinion. The last one wasn't super unclose.
Was it a second round sub?
Oh, I believe it might have been. I know it was. I know there's quite a.
But it was a decent fight up until that point. I remember it being.
Yeah, definitely. So it was quite contentious. So. Interesting one. I think it's a TKO, I believe.
Oh,
no. But yeah, no. This is second round sub. Yeah. But interesting fight. I don't know how do you think this is gonna go?
For me, I think there isn't enough time to sort of grow loads between them, especially Dontel Mays. He's been in the UFC a long time now, hasn't shown loads of improvement. I think it goes kind of similar. I think it will end in a submission. I'm going the same. I'm gonna go second round submission. I'm gonna go TKO actually. I'm gonna change it up. I think he'll win by ground and pound.
Okay, I think this is, if I'm honest with you, I can see this one going the distance.
Really?
I really can. I think this is going to be, I'm going to go with Rodrigo. I think he's going to take the decision. But I can genuinely see this one going the distance. I think that they've been both improved so much.
Yeah.
And I think that the vulnerability which Dontel had, he still does have to an extent. But I think he's gotten a lot better at grappling as well. And that in itself is going to definitely help him out all throughout the fight. I think it's going to go Rodrigo decision personally.
So getting on to the next fight, we have the other brother on this card. I think you think this one's a bit worse than Ishmael, right?
No. I think this one's better.
Yeah, so do I. I think he's just got a few more weapons. We're not here to compare them. We're here to break down his fight with Delby. But I think one major thing that kind of does glare out for me, sometimes his striking defense can seem a bit iffy. I don't think Delby would be the guy to kind of expose that, but in these big exchanges, you see him getting caught because he's relentless for the finish. I think all three of his fights in Contender and in the UFC have ended by, I think it was a TKO or submission. Both Paul Guillotine in his UFC fights looked insane so early on. Delby's not a guy who's probably going to finish him, let's be real. Doesn't really have that. I mean, he has finished guys before, but I think it's not a thing we see loads. Never been finished in his MMA career, which is interesting considering Bonfim's 15-0, and I mean, I'd like to see how many of those are finishes. How do you find Delby's chances in this one?
So, something with Darby, he's very good on the feet. His Muay Thai is so high level, and he's really good when he's fighting at distance. Because with Darby, you look at his leg kicks, for example. His leg kicks are so strong. He's good at throwing them it's almost like a very jab almost.
Yeah.
In a weird enough way. And with Dalby, the way he fights, we often see when he does get taken down, he's not able to do what he needs to do. Unfortunately, this is a big vulnerability for him, especially against a fighter like Bonfim. Bonfim has multiple submissions under his belt. I think with Dalby, you look at Gabriel Bonfim, he is explosive from the start. He is on you and he is relentless. He constantly goes for it. And a lot of these submissions are coming from situations where he is applying pressure, and he kind of uses his striking at times to get you in a position to sub you, to not necessarily always drop you, but to get you into a position where he can trip you up or he can take you down from either these clinch positions or even just standing. I think this is something which Dalby's going to have a hard time doing. I also think though Dalby up close is very dangerous.
He's gritty and he really likes to put pace on people.
And I think that this is something which I could be wrong, but Bonfim is going to he's going to find more challenging because Dalby he's an experienced fighter. He's been fighting for a very long time and he's fought some tough opponents as well.
I think he drew with Darren Till, I think, early on.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's one of those things. He's fought a lot of experience and he's been about in the UFC for a very long time. Bonfim, he's coming up. He's on an absolute tear at the moment. Like I said, 15-0.
Yeah, all finishes.
That's such an impressive record. There aren't many fighters who have these 15-0 records. A lot of them are like 15-2 and 15-3, the up-and-comers anyway. So he's doing so well. It all depends on how he reacts early on to the pressure, because the pressure's going to be applied all throughout the fight.
Yeah.
No matter how long it lasts. And I personally think that there's going to be just a bit too much. I think Dalby is vulnerable on the ground. And I can personally see a submission. I don't know how. I think the first round, I think he's going to do well in these exchanges. I think he's going to be able to react to it quickly. I think he's going to be giving, like you said, that grit.
Yeah.
You're going to see a lot of grit. But I think second round, they always break through.
Yeah.
These fighters who are applying these pressure, 9 times out of 10, they break through at one point, and I don't think Dalby's going to be able to stop it. I don't think he's going to be able to stop it. I think that when he gets to the ground, I do see a submission, so I'm going to go with the second round finish.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because Dalby's never been submitted, and Bonfim's only got finishes, 12 submission wins. So, I mean, it's an interesting battle between the two. I do overall agree with you. I was tempted to say Dalby's going to be the first guy to take him to the scorecards, but I think Bonfim is just a different sort of animal when it comes to the ground. So I'm going to go with the same on you and go second round submission. I think that's a smart call. The main event, big hitters. Well, one's a big hitter, one's a big grappler. Jonathan Almeida looked incredible since he's come to the UFC. Derek Lewis leading most knockouts UFC history. Probably the second or third biggest punch we've ever seen in UFC history. This is another matchup you look at and think maybe it's not great for him, but we thought that about Curtis Blades and look what happened there. The big uppercut lands. Do you see him landing it this time? I think it will probably be the same punch if he wins this fight.
I don't know, because Almeida, he's not a big guy.
No.
And you look at where he fights at, I think his last fight, he moved up to heavyweight. So this is somebody who's moving up to heavyweight, and he's on a bit of a tear at the moment. His takedowns, like you said, his wrestling, it's almost like you don't see it coming. There's no telegraphing of it. He just shoots and you're on the ground. I don't think that Derek Lewis is necessarily the best at stopping these takedowns. He's not. It's not the worst, but he's not the best. There are definitely vulnerabilities there. I also think, though, like you said about the uppercut, I also think that Derek Lewis's finishing power, especially against somebody who could potentially be fighting 2 weight classes lower than him.
And shoots double legs.
I
swear he's opened every fight with a front kick to a double leg.
Yeah.
I think that's been every opening in the UFC. I don't think he'll do it this time because Derek Lewis has probably watched that, but...
Yeah, you say that, but I don't know. Derek Lewis.
Yeah, true. He probably hasn't watched that.
No, but I think that this is a really hard fight for Almeida, not because Derek Lewis is some super technical fighter, but because he's just a beast.
Dangerous. So dangerous.
It's like he's hitting you with cars.
Yeah,
which sounds like a strange thing to say, but it is.
I mean, Ngannou literally is, apparently. So.
Well, no, he's like a chalk, actually. But I think if Almeida secures the takedown, I think Derek Lewis is in a lot of trouble. I really do. And I don't know whether it happens early on or not. But if he does, then this is when he is going to be very, very vulnerable in the fight. However, I think on the feet, if I'm honest with you, I think Derek Lewis takes relatively comfortably.
Really?
I do, because I just think that the power is just too much.
For a guy that size, well, let's be real, he fought middleweight before.
And he looks like a middleweight in a lot of his fights. You know, he's a light heavyweight, moving up to heavyweight. He is a heavyweight, he's fighting a heavyweight, but he's...
And he's looked better at heavyweight. I mean, his last fight, was that his first fight at heavyweight or his second?
I believe it might have been his first.
But he said how much better he felt at that weight. Felt just so much stronger at that weight.
And this is the thing, a lot of these fighters do feel a lot better when they are fighting at a weight which doesn't quite look right, like Nathaniel Wood. You know, we look at him, he doesn't look like he should be fighting at a weight, but he feels better fighting at that weight. And with Almeida, I think the trouble is when you do fight at this weight, Derek Lewis is one of the hardest hitters in that division.
Probably the hardest in that division now.
And that's the thing with when you're fighting at a weight which doesn't look too comfortable or doesn't look like you should be fighting at, you're gonna have a hard time with these big power punches. And that's what a lot of it is. A lot of these finishes come from these guys who aren't super technical. Not to say that Derek Lewis isn't, but it's a different kind of technical. It's not so much clean. It's more, well, he'll hit you clean, but it's not this clean, nice, crisp boxing or
it's just
striking.
One big swing in it usually.
Haymaker after haymaker. No, there's so much more to him than that.
Not really.
Well,
the right hand is about it, to be fair.
But to be fair, that right hand does work.
Hey, the flying knee, actually. He's got the jumping switch kick and the flying knee these days.
Yeah, in fairness, he's world class, really, isn't he? But no disrespect, because you can't discredit anything he does.
No, he actually is a world class fighter.
Yeah,
so
quite literally.
Disrespecting him.
And he's an athlete as well.
We've had this argument before. He is an athlete.
He is an athlete. He is, and I personally can see him finishing this fight relatively quickly. I think if Almeida takes it to the ground, though, it's hard, because the moment he takes it to the ground, I think Derek is in a lot of trouble. I really do.
I mean, I think Almeida's probably a big favourite going into it, and I thought you were going to go with the sensible pick and go Almeida, and I was going to be the one to pick Derek Lewis because I see him knocking Almeida out in the first round.
So do I.
I just think, you know, he had his 2 fights in Texas and lost. Said he bottled it in front of the home crowd. How Derek Lewis is it to take a fight on 2 weeks' notice in Brazil against their big prospect and just spark him out in the first round? I think that's so likely to be something Derek Lewis does, and I'm going for it. First round knockout, Derek Lewis, uppercut. from the front kick. It's going to be in the first minute and a half, I reckon. That's what I'm going for.
So I can see where you're coming from. I'm also going to go first round finish. I don't know if it'll be the first minute and a half.
Nah, I'm kind of over exaggerating,
But
I just want to look cool if it goes like that.
But I do think he's going to finish it, and I think that shooting for that takedown, Derek Lewis is going to be on that.
Yeah.
He knows it's coming. He's thinking, all right, Masvidal.
We could. I feel like we could get this one horribly wrong, and we both understand that because Almeida. Let's be real, he dominated a proper heavyweight in his last fight. Rosenstruck's a big guy, but Derek Lewis has that kind of. I also think it's a very good sort of point that Almeida's. You don't see great heavyweights with great jiu-jitsu. He's got really good jiu-jitsu, so if he does take Lewis down, I doubt he's just going to stand up like he does. But overall, I'm calling it. I'll never go against Derek Lewis. Derek Lewis first round knockout.
I just think that the power is going to be too much, and I can see him. I think he's going to be way too prepared.
Yeah.
To be, although it is very short notice.
But he's been preparing for these guys for 20 years, wrestlers, hasn't he?
And that's the thing. If you know, even if you've got 2 weeks, it's all still there. All the training from all those years is still there. He's just refining it. He's just been refining it for these 2 weeks, and he knows that he can't get taken down. And his coaches will have been telling him, you cannot get taken down. Because like you said, the jiu-jitsu, these heavier guys, it's not always there. There are some very high-level heavyweights with very high-level jiu-jitsu. But for the most part, regardless, I think he's going to beat two on that. And if it stays anywhere on the feet, then I think that Almeida's in a lot of trouble. I think that Derek Lewis, he's just too powerful for so many guys. And
he's going to be a lot quicker than Lewis.
Oh, yeah, definitely so. But I think a lot of people are going to be a lot quicker than Lewis.
It doesn't matter.
That's just how it is, really. I also do think, though, that if Almeida does take him down, then he's in a lot of trouble. And I think that... Do you think he could potentially catch Almeida shooting?
Yeah, I think that's probably how it will happen. That's how I see it happening.
Because I was thinking about it, but at the same time, I also think that it's quite hard to catch someone like Almeida shooting.
Yeah, he's so fast. They're a lot quicker than Curtis Blades was at grabbing those hips, that's for sure.
And the way he doesn't telegraph it either, it's just going to be really hard to call. I could see him potentially stopping it or maybe landing a strike to potentially say, like, no.
Back off.
Please. But no, I feel like overall, I think it's going to be a finish on the feet. I don't think he's going to stop trying to grapple him because I think that is the most logical thing to do. It would be good to see Almeida finish him because that would be so impressive.
Yeah, statement.
It really would be. But I'm going to go Derek Lewis first round finish, as I said.
Yeah, so that's basically all we've got to talk about today. There's not loads of news happening at the moment. We're kind of just sat here waiting for Tom to have his title fight next week. Excited to talk about that one. Yeah, make sure you rate us 5 stars on Spotify, share to your friends so this can grow. We hope you enjoyed.